Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to winning the day. Welcome to becoming the best and winning the day. Grand rise, divine rise, blessed be to your day, may be everything you require to understand the internal aspects of what you desire. Yesterday I made a post. It went right in alignment with aspects of we going into assault and battery on the God Hour podcast. Everything that comes into your space is based on the cells, based on those cells of whether it's aggression, whatever that level's coming at. And it made me think, and I saw that post about Unhealed Manifestation, and I wanted to get a little bit into that. Because, Friday, we're getting into the vicarious fields or the fields of thought. Understanding those fields of thought, how they link up. So God Hour podcast out now, streaming now. All services, shadow work consultations, all that good stuff. We'll get into that at the end. But let's start with the Unhealed Manifesto. You keep, for examples, put a couple of examples. You keep trying to manifest someone to love you like you love them. And you keep attracting, for example, the narcissistic archetype or somebody that is basically just as truly full of the physical world, the physical and the material as you. And so you're like, oh my God, I can't understand why this person doesn't do this or this person. Is because of how you're attracting them. You have some unhealed issues in that visualization. Remember, your unseen creates your entire space. You keep trying to, I got a story, like I remember my homeboy, my brother, 10 years strong, 10, 12 years. Like I remember everything that he got. I remember he wanted every fucking time we went to the club, every time we went somewhere, he said he wanted a red bone, big booty stripper chick. That's the type of chick that he wanted. And he got a big booty stripper chick that he wanted. But this was like, what, I'm going to say like back in 2009, 2003, 2004, when he finally got it. And then she had so many underlining father issues. And I remember having a conversation with him, and then like now when I think about it, when I'm going back and assessing, he never met his father. So he had underlining father issues. So when we're thinking about manifesting, setting your intentions, that thing that you're visualizing, that aspect of your visualization, if in my mind I'm thinking, oh, I want to have $1 million, but the only way I can think about having $1 million is when I visualize and when I close my eyes, is all I can see is based on what's rooted in my past. That's what the intentions are going to seed into my space. So now if I start getting these aspects into our spaces, so they say, okay, cool, you got the stimmy check, or you got your stimmy check, you got your unemployment check, whatever it may be. You got to be honest with yourself. As the story of me going public with G.O.D Alchemist LLC, it was after I said so many times before of saying, yo, I'm going to leave, and being upset, I'm going to leave my job and all of these things. I had to get really truthful with myself, because in that space, I remember when that COVID happened and I was no longer going to work, every unemployment check went to the company and building something in some way on top of the company. It's not saying that we didn't take a trip, not saying anything of that nature, but everything that you're doing is going to be an investment into your now. So if my mind and visualization is still based on escaping from my past instead of getting to know the aspects of my past, then as soon as it comes in, it's going to go out the same way. Because I'm on that fear-based, I'm still in that fear-based. I still have things I have not assessed. I still have things that I have not yet learned. Everything that comes into your space, as we're getting into throughout this week, everything that comes into your space is based on where you are at truly. I saw another post. It was like, yo, The relationships that you build, they're based on your self-esteem, the true aspects to yourself. So whenever you go into a space, just think about it. You having countless relationship issues and relationship problems with your job, everything that you're getting into that space. It's because it has as I said yesterday, as we said in the podcast, it's only going to match the level or the ohms of the level of the energy or your emotional endurance, your spiritual stamina, based on how you've applied to that mental output. So a lot of times for us when we're inside of that space, I remember being in that space with myself like, yo, I want to manifest, and just thinking to myself like, yo, I want to get a car. Okay, cool. Everything that would come up that would trump me getting a car came up. So needed to get my license, had to get some court fees taken care of, whole bunch of things came up into the space. So I got the car, I still got the car, but remember we're in the space of duality. Now everything that came with the car was a lesson in how I got the car, how I got it, how I was going to maintain it, how I attracted it, how I was going to keep it. So now I'm sitting in that space and like, oh shit, I lost my car. How did I lose my car? The same way that I had it. The same way that I got it. How did you get into that space? The same way that you got it is the same way that you're going to lose it. You have to maintain that or learn the lessons. We got to learn the lessons. Allow those things to come up so we can learn the lessons so that even when that goes away, we're not stuck with an attachment. That's relationships, friendships, the job, everything. It's very easy for us, a lot of times, it's very, very easy for us to sit there and say, I need not and want not. It's easy to say it. But to apply that formula to every stream of thought, that's that next step. Like using the aspect, I was thinking about it while I was taking my shower after I left the gym. Your body replaces itself. You have a brand new body every 7 years. We know that if we research that if you're on a plant-based diet for 6 months, for each 3 months within that 6-month cycle, your DNA switches over. Everything that shit cuts on, the shit that was on goes off, and the shit that goes off comes on. Everything comes online. So if I'm thinking about a 7-year process that I have a brand new body, and now I understand on a deeper level that the physical manifestation of this body of light or information is all of my emotional aspects, and I have unhealed or undealt with emotional aspects that are going on, that are creating my body, that's what my body is going to be formed based on. That's what's going to be attracted to my body the next time. So if I look at it, use simple example. Go to the gym, you working out, getting your workouts in. So now sometimes when you're upset, you go to the gym. When you're not feeling, you want to get that dopamine and serotonin released in your body, you go to the gym. In order for you to continue going down that space of you attracting yourself into the gym, things inside of your space that you see must match the frequency of what you're manifesting based on your intentions. So now you go to the gym, and you were going to the gym hard for about 6 months, and in the 7th month, you get sidetracked because now you looking over at the nigga over here taking pictures of himself, or you looking over at the chick over here doing squats. You getting unfocused. So now the original reason for why you were going to the gym, your truer aspect, that judgment, that doubt, that rejection, that wound is now coming up in that space. It's either one or two choices. Either you're going to face it, you're going to deal with those emotions, you're going to set that pattern, you're going to assess that pattern, assess those behaviors, assess those habits, get real deep with yourself, or you're going to avoid it, and then you're going to be like, I can't go to the gym no more. I can't go to the gym no more. Everybody in there doing all this. I can't go to the gym anymore. Okay. I can't go to my job anymore. I hate my job. Do you really hate your job? Other than the X, because remember, if I look and take accountability for my space, and I understand everything that's within my space is based on a reflection for me to experience and or observe, and I have this knowledge in my mind, then how can I really be upset at my job for doing exactly what it's supposed to do? If the reason that I received it in my space was based on that unseen thought, I simply don't want to struggle. I got to stay independent. I got to stay in this certain wavelength. Therefore, everything in your space got to match that. When it comes into this emotional endurance we've been getting into in this aspect of that, what you're vibrating at, that law of attraction, you coming into that space, everything in your space must remain at that aspect. And this is where you become the bad guy. You have to become the bad guy. Because now you got to look at yourself and you're like, why every time? Because I saw another post on TikTok. The guy said, why does a chick wait until after she leave with the dude? Or why does the dude, I saw another one with a chick. Why does the dude always seem to level up after they left the chick? Or in that relationship or that aspect? You were meant to be a lesson. Sometimes you got to accept allowing everything to work for you. Understanding that you have, that's your energy, that's your power, your thoughts, your emotions. Bring that physical manifestation to work for you. So you didn't went down 6 relationships, 6 dates, 6 relationships. You got motherfuckers in your inbox. And you're like, let me make an announcement. I'm tired of these niggas in my inbox. I'm tired of these bitches in my inbox. But then going later on down the line, you making posts about you want this and you want this and you want stability and you want stability. You want somebody that is cooking and doing all of those things. You're bringing them back into your space. Anybody can fit the external standard. Anybody can fit your external standard. That's easy. You can manifest anything based on your external standard. That's easy. So many times I got exactly what I needed to fit the external standard. Shorty was just good enough to go on trips with, because I was in a point in time when I was escaping through going through trips. So she fit the description of me going on trips. But when it came time for me to really get serious with myself in these moments in time, and I'm talking about investing, I'm talking about, I'm talking about investing, I'm talking about doing, like, getting healthy, getting right with myself into that narrative. Every time I came into that space, and this is on both ends, I'm gonna do both ends, they would fall away. My internal standard was being changed. So when we're looking inside of these spaces with yourselves, and you're looking at, I talked about that yesterday, I'm gonna go deeper today. Think about the game that you ran to get what you have inside of your space, based on the emotional content. Moving based on your emotions instead of moving based on logic. Your emotions will get you attached into a space, but your logic will help you move clearly. That thought process. Oh my God, people are thinking of, I went from a process of being in that thought process of fear that that underlining fear came to the surface of people are gonna judge me, look at me like I'm crazy and all of that shit. And in my mind, I'm saying, I don't care what people think about me. I don't care all that. But in reality, I did. Because I wouldn't have made when I was challenged in that space emotionally, I wouldn't have felt the need to have to check people. I wouldn't have to feel the need to buck up and be like, yo, you can't come at me that way. Sniper, remember that? Your sniping post. They were the sniping posts. My inner child was like, you're going to pay attention to me today. This is the aspect of you getting into this space of what you're manifesting. You're constantly bringing things into your space. You're constantly bringing in things into your space based on your stream of thought. Your trust issues, your avoidance issues, your rejection issues, those internal wounds. That's what's bringing those things into your space. So you sitting there wondering why every time you manifest a man in your life, the niggas now, you say it is narcissistic, because they stuck on some external narrative, or you want it to be taken care of. But what is it really based in? How did your father take care of you? Or how did your father take care of you? Whether they overly bought you everything and got you gifts and gave you everything that you wanted, or they were under to the aspect and they said, I always wanted to do this, this, and this. On both sides of that scale, you're going to have to go back and assess. You're looking at the aspects, I want a woman that can cook, clean, and all of these things in that space, and you manifest, you'll get that, but it's going to be based on a certain level of emotional content. It's going to be based on the frequency and the amps and the voltage that you can put into that space. So now you sit in that space like you stop doing things at a certain point in that physical sense, because the physical sense is only a manifestation of your emotions. You're moving in the aspects of that feeling instead of moving with that logic and reason and keeping yourself in balance. Tapping in, understanding our emotions is just as important as us coming into that new logic. It's time to check the board out. Everything inside of your space is there for a certain purpose. Everything inside of your space is based on a certain purpose, that behavioral aspect for yourself, your attitude, your emotions, that thought. So you need that there in order for it to pull something out of you. So you can't even take the enjoyment of just sitting in a space with yourself and just being in that space. Because in your space, how was that space created? What was that escape created for? I talked about that yesterday. We talked about it in the podcast. We're going to get deeper into it on Friday when we get into vicarious fields. When I made that post and I made that aspect of that post, think about yourself in the space like this. You're a god. You're a god. You're a goddess. You're a titan. You're this higher level being, but you're still thinking like a dog trying to be human. You're still thinking like a dog trying to be human. Bringing it to that higher thought process with yourself, allowing yourself to be released from that old aspect, because all you're going to do is keep manifesting at the same rate of where you're at. You have to be able to visualize. I said it. We talked about it before. That LLC mentality, that ownership mentality, is not just based on, ooh, you got a job and you work. No, it's based on owning your story. It's based on the full ownership of every part of your story. Being able to sit there into that space, you have to acknowledge your escapes. Why? You have to acknowledge your escapes. You got to sit there and sit on that boat, in that relationship, that boat, and assess and learn what are my life rafts, all my safety and my getaway to. What are they? Because that's the shit with yourself. How do you escape? What's your life? What the life preservers look like? What are they representing your life? That's what everything in your space is. It changes everything. Like I always said that. It changes everything. It changes the dynamic of how you move. It changes your breath. It literally changes the way that you breathe. It changes the way that you see, the vivid imagery that you're looking at. It does you no good to go sun gazing and get that download going down if you're keeping that mask on, because now all you see is the vivid colors of the emotional aspects, reds and the colors of red and blue and all of these colors, and they triggering that emotional aspect within you. Everything that you do, everything that you bring yourself into, that download is based on where you're at and what you need to assess. It's based on where you're at and where you need to assess. It's not based on that old paradigm. It's not based on the old investment pattern that you were in. A lot of us were investing in this sense of stability based on simply not going back. So we say to ourselves, I used to say to myself, there's no going back, but I had to understand what I was really not going back to. That's when that shit came to the forefront. I said, there's no going back. All of a sudden, my mom called me 19 times. I avoid the conversation. Either I'm avoiding the conversation or I'm going to have the conversation. It's time to have it. That's why think about it with yourself. Think about it like this. You can say, hey, I'm going to take the day off and I'm going to do this, this, and this. Going down that aspect based on your emotions where you were at, you were thinking about release. So now everything in your space is going to be a compilation of things that are going to come up that are going to help you learn how to release. I remember there'd be days I'd be like, yo, it's my day off. It's my day off. I ain't doing shit. And then that's when everybody would call me with their issues and call me with all of these problems and all of that aspects and all of that shit. And I'd be like, why everybody want to call on me? Why everybody call on me won't leave me alone? I brought them into the space. I had to accept that there was days when I was off or every time I said that, I put that into that space. So now I was learning my standard and my boundaries. I had to accept that motherfuckers was going to get upset with me when I set my new boundary. Because my boundary wasn't ego-based. My boundary was not based on avoidance or based on the wound. It was based on me sitting there healing that wound. It was based on me being above that wound, that avoidance, that rejection, that decline. If I walk away from a space and I tell somebody, nah, I can't do it tonight, or no, I can't do it today, I need to take some me time to myself. I need to work. I need to do this I need to work on myself. Accepting this, when I really started accepting this aspect, the first thing that came up a lot of the times, that when we're doing this internal work is the views and the perceptions of others. First thing that's going to come up when you start manifesting. It's just like when you have a success and you like, yeah, I'm successful. Same way that you own your successes, you got to own your failures, your lessons. So I'm sitting there in that space and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, cool. I've been working hard to go get this vacation or to get this aspect of my job. And then somebody else get a new job. Somebody else get a new car. Somebody else get a new place. Somebody else get something. And then my automatic experience is saying for me in that point in time, I was like, that's nice. Man, they ain't never worked a day in their life and they got that. I was staying in the negative seat instead of being able to look like, congratulations. That way I can pull in, that way I'm in that space of energy. Everything down here is lined up for you to win. Everything down here is lined up for you to master and get out of that, to step to that next level. But that comfort zone, that space to soothe and avoid for avoidance, that space to soothe, to stay away from what you're at, you're only going to keep running yourself ragged. I had to look back at my old life. I had to look back at the old aspects of my life and why I did the same things every damn time. That was the most recent assessment, as I talked about yesterday. This week, in this time I'm working out. Last year I was in a detox. The year before that I was in a fast. And the year before that, I was homeless. I had to own all of those aspects because that train of thought helped me tap into those emotional aspects. That train of thought helped me tap into those emotional aspects. It's time to tap into that emotion. It's time to tap in. It's time to bring yourself into that space where, as we talked about Friday during the lecture, had people out there wrecking in the streets. Had people out there wrecking in the streets. You have to get to this point where you don't believe in anything. You're letting go of everything. The way you used to believe in life and how you used to believe in people and believe in all those things. That's that point of no self. That's that point of no return. That's that point of no self. That's that point when you waking up looking in the mirror, as an example of me. That's the point when you're going to go look in the mirror and you don't even recognize yourself anymore. I remember doing that during that I did a fucking 40-day fucking fast. And I remember looking at myself and I literally looked dead. I was I had no color in my face. I did not look. I couldn't recognize myself without the mask. That's the point that you're going to get to. That's the point that's one of the points you don't recognize yourself without the mask. That's you. That's your inner child. That's your inner child coming to the surface. Think about the movie Children Under the Stairs. That's what your inner child gonna look scary as hell. Because you kept them in the dark. You're worried about everything in the external aspect with yourself of maintaining this identity. But meanwhile, you're like, that attention wound that you're pulling through, the avoidance, these wounds that you keep pulling through, whether you know them or not, these things that you're running through, whether you know it, whether you've accepted it or not. I'm not going to say whether you know it or not, because you do know. It's whether you're in that space with yourself. It's whether you're in that space with yourself, whether I'm going to be consciously going to deal with it or I'm not. So you looking at them kids under the stairs, they look real scary. You got the children in the attic, you looking real scary. What are you hiding from? What are you afraid to bring to the surface? What are you afraid to accept of yourself? I started rewatching Sons of Anarchy. Rewatching Sons of Anarchy. If you haven't seen it, great show. Up until when he killed his mom. Great show. I'm like Jack season 6. I remember that part of my shadow work. Here's a lesson. Here's something to sit and sizzle in your spirit. There's an episode on there where the daughter gets raped at Funtown. And her mother's trying to make it. Her mother says this. If they find him, they put a face and then it becomes real. And then she'll always be known as the girl that got raped at Funtown. And then Gemma said to her, out of her mouth, she was like, whether or not she's already in her head, the child that was raped at Funtown. The only thing that's more different, the only thing that's more dangerous, either on either end of that aspect, is whether everybody knows. The only thing more worse on the further end extreme is nobody knows. It makes you start thinking about your life in the aspects of why you're doing certain things, why you're attached to certain dynamics, why that dynamic no longer works, and it's always a highly emotional dynamic. Remember, that attachment is based in the emotional aspect. If it makes you feel some type of way, but you can't seem to shift away from it, it's showing you an emotional attachment. Similar to when your grandmother told you, don't make a decision when you're angry. Don't make a decision when you're upset. Don't make a decision based on your emotions, because you're regretting. That's where you at right now, in that place of no self. You're in that land of neutrality. Your peace is now being challenged. What are you going to do? Your instincts for survival are being challenged. What are you about to do? It takes roughly 6 months to clear up every year. So if you take 6 straight months to yourself, and with me, when you come have a session with me, it's 6 weeks. 6 weeks, basically, I take you up. We're going outside of time. 6 weeks with me is 6 months. 4 to 6 weeks is damn 4 a month to 6 4 to 6 months. That's the intensity when we're doing this work, when we're working on that aspect. It's time to take yourself into that pressure zone and allow yourself to crack. Allow yourself to get emotional. I had a conversation the other day, and somebody was like, they started doing their shadow work. I've had many people say that. I started doing my shadow work, and then I got really emotional. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how you know it's working. If you're doing shadow work and you're not getting emotional, you're not doing shadow work. If you're doing it, because trust me. Remember, I talked about it during the lecture. There was a point in time in my life during the earlier parts of my shadow work where I was sitting in my living room in the dark, listening to the Kid Cudi album. Same song on repeat. Don't even remember the name of the damn song. But I'm sitting there in that space, crying, snot, angry, throwing shit, fucked up my entire living room. But when I was in that space, I didn't even realize that the things I think I'm throwing around bodies and shit, but I'm throwing around pillows and everything. I'm destroying my space. So when I came to, I was like, nigga, I did all this? I blacked out. God damn. It's time to tap in. It's not going to change. You're not going to bring anything into that space without it having that tag. that tag of the emotional aspects. It has the ingredients right there on the box. It has the ingredients right there with it whenever you're manifesting into your space. It has the ingredients in order to how to maintain it. Yeah, you're gonna need these points of isolation. As I always, like, I remember I was watching David Banner a while back, and he said if you can't let go of something for 72 hours, there's a deeply rooted emotional attachment to it. If the first time that you sit there inside of a space and you say you can't do it because of some external standard, such as the first time that I ever fasted, I remember saying it and I was like, I can't do it. I remember my mother, this was around the time I was getting back in a relationship with my mother. First time I fasted, like, you gotta be careful. You ain't gonna eat for 30 days. You know you need to eat a meal every day. I was like, no, I don't. I got this jug of water. I'm off for a week. It's all in your setup. If you have an immense fear that if you do your fast and you're not going to be able to work and perform, guess what you need to do? You need to set up the time. You need to set the physical space. You want to do rituals and altars all the time, you got to set up the space. So it was coming up in my bye week of me working, had about good 4 days off. I fasted all 4 days. I had no way to avoid. This is what you're doing. I had no way to avoid anything. I couldn't be like, well, I got to go to work, so I can't do this. No, I need to do this. Or no, you got to remove those distractions from your space. You got to assess those emotional attachments to those spaces. This is not for an external aspect for motherfuckers to look at you and be like, ooh, look at you. Look at you out there over there fasting. Look at you over there fasting. I can't do it. Oh, look at you going plant-based. I can't get rid of chicken wings. This ain't for them. You're going to start understanding you're going to start seeing, in order, as we said it before, in order to see the projections that are being projected upon you to maintain the identity, you have to first assess the projections that you put out based on your identity. That's the honesty. You get real vulnerable during the fast. I remember the last time I did a fast, and I'm just sitting here drinking my water, and I'm really, really vulnerable. I'm just, sounds getting all harder and shit. I'm like, why is everything louder? Because my mind didn't have something to connect to. It's time to heal. It's time to cleanse. It's time to do that detox. It's time to get this work. It's time to allow those triggers to make you feel the emotion. You get angry, sit there with the anger. Transmute it into the space of healing. That's what Bobby Hemmett meant about, you got to get mad. You got to get into that space of despair. He was talking about going into your no self. You got to allow yourself to go into that no self. Feel it. And now going into that space with yourself. If you require that assessment, you don't know how to build that space, it's time to let go of that fear, and it's time to tap in. That's what I do. Shadow work consultations, all of my readings are mini consultations. We're going to bring things to the surface. We're going to assess these things to the surface. I'm not going to help you. We're not going to bring things to the surface and I'm going to sit there and be like, oh, you got some maternal wounds. You got some maternal wounds, and I'm going to walk off. No, I'm there with you. I'm there as long, I'm only the vessel to help you get to where you want to go. I cannot become this vessel until I first empty myself of those aspects. Going through those years of that process. Assessing, learning, reflecting. Still assessing, learning, reflecting. Because the one thing about shadow work, it's never done. Because once you integrate with that first shadow, you got more shadows you're going to integrate with until you would lock your full potential. The longer that you avoid, the more it's going to hurt. It's time to rip the Band-Aid off. I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. Let me read this real quick. Yep. That's what happens when you allow yourself to sit with the emotion, your logic starts to kick in. You have to allow your logic to push you outside of that comfort zone of going back. Remember, there's no going back. It's only going forward. The only day that matters is today, because the only day that exists is today. You are the only aspect in your life that is of that real. You got a choice. You got a choice. Either you're going to pick up that power, you're going to pick up that sword and you're going to swing and start cutting shit out the way, or you're going to allow it to beat you up. You've always been in the right position. You've always been in the right space. You've always been in the right position. You've always been on your square. Now it's time to define your square. It's time to define your position. It's time to define your position. It's time to take these things that are holding you back out of remission and allow them to come fully to the surface. It's time to heal. I desire you to be the fucking best. Consultations, readings, shadow work therapy, all of it in one place. Hit me up in the inbox and we can start, set it up. We can set you up. I desire you to be the fucking best. But in order to become the best, you got to get past that feel good and get into feeling better. I love you. We love us. Ashe.